Hey, y'all, welcome to season 2, episode 6 of the Peace Podcast. And this episode is just give me value, whatever that looks like. So, when we're thinking about value, oftentimes we place our worth on what other people think of us and what other people value about us more so than we do on what we actually deem valuable about ourselves. And the interesting thing about that is that when you place your value on what other people deem to be valuable about you, you're a slave to other people's opinions, right? And so, because other people's opinions vary and other people's opinions are all over the place, then you become a victim of this person thinks this is valuable about me, or this person doesn't think this is valuable about me. And so, you don't have a true sense of your worth because you're basing it on these things that are fickle, and people base their value of you on their feelings and what you do for them, etc. And so it makes me think of a conversation that I had with my 6-year-old the other day. And he gets off the school bus and he's super excited and he gets in the car and he's like, this thing happened at school and this thing happened at school. And he's like, you're the best mommy ever. Because, I'm having a conversation with him about things that happen at school. And then within probably 30 minutes, he asked to do something that I had to tell him no to because it wasn't conducive to our schedule that day. And it turned into, you're the worst mom, and you never let me, and you always da 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 da. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be something if I based the value of myself as a parent on the things that he finds worthy in me? And based on his immature and limited views of the world, he's going to base his like my likability, his understanding of the situation off of his own emotions. And so if I only felt valuable as a parent when my kids liked me, then I wouldn't feel very worthy, because if you have multiple children like I do, and then this, there might be a time where one of them loves you and thinks you're amazing, while the other two think you're the worst mom in the world. There might be one time where you make something for dinner that one person is like, oh, this is the best. And then two other people are like, oh my gosh, we've had this a million times. And so, even though you have those three children and they came from your womb and they all exist in the same household, what they deem valuable is completely different. It's a vast array based on their emotions, their feelings that day, whatever their likes and dislikes are. And so if I find my worth in their ability to see my value in that current moment, I would never feel worthy. And like I was saying before, if they have a limited viewpoint of the world, then they're only going to find value in their parent when their parent is being appeasing or in alignment with what they want, as opposed to what they actually need. And we know as parents that our value is in shaping, molding, and growing them into humans that can operate in the world in a compassionate and um, functional way. And sometimes that is not appeasing to them when they're children. And so, doesn't that happen with us in life too? I think about when, someone passes away in their family and they have an estate sale, and people are like, this isn't of value, this isn't worthy. But then they go on the show Pawn Stars, and like one person kind of sees the coolness or uniqueness of this thing, and they take it in there and it's worth like millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you think, well, in one person's hands, that thing didn't have any value. In fact, it was trash. Like it was something they were going to throw out. But in another person's hands, they had the curiosity and the open mindedness to see that there could be some potential value in it. So they took it to a place where that person would be able to observe the value of that thing. And so it makes me think of the time when my grandmother passed away. She used to collect the toys that came in the Happy Meals. And I'm talking like from the 1980s. She collected all these toys. And so she had these huge, the popcorn tins that come out at Christmas, and they have all the different kinds of popcorn in it. She would eat the popcorn or throw away the popcorn and keep the bins. And she would put those Happy Meal toys inside the bins. And when she passed away and they were cleaning out the basement, they found hundreds of those bins in the basement. Well, we're not really sure what happened to those bins, but I can almost promise you that the people who were sifting through that stuff in the basement, they didn't see the value in what was inside of those tins. Perhaps those things were worth money. I don't know. But there were people who saw the sentimental value in it and wanted to go inside of the tins and collect some of those things because there was some emotion attached to it. And then there are people who wondered what the monetary value of those things would have been. And if you came from the Beanie Baby era, you know that stuffed animals can sometimes have an insane amount of value to them in monetary form. And so it really is knowing that your value has to be known intrinsically. Your value has to be known in a space where you know that God placed you here, and because you're still here, you have a plan to exist in this world and make some sort of movement in this world, an impact in this world. And it's also knowing that sometimes people can have something of high value right in the palm of their hands. And because they don't see the value in it, or they don't understand the value in it, or they're not mature enough to be able to see what it's worth, they're going to deem it unworthy. So your value can't be based on that. I heard it was in a podcast or something that I listened to, and they were talking about how, archaeologists will do these digs for rocks, and it might be in a space where you and I would walk in that space, see a rock, and not think anything of it, throw it out, not really care that it was in its space. But an archaeologist who knows things about rocks, their viewpoint is going to be completely different. So they might see that same thing and they might be like, oh my gosh, like this is very rare, or this has a lot of value, or this is something that we need to go explore some more, because it's based on who is observing it. And that doesn't mean that you receive your value based on who's observing it, but it means that you need to pay attention to who is observing you and who you're letting in your space to tell you what your worth is. Because if you're in a space where you're with somebody who is in a relationship with you only to receive, then they're only going to want more and more and more, and they're not going to see the value of the thing that's in front of them because it's not giving in abundance what they think that they need. And that's mostly because they're not giving themselves any of the love and compassion and consideration that they should be giving intrinsically. So they expect that to be all placed on you. And because they're operating from that space of lack, they can look right at you and observe the qualities that you have and feel like they're not enough. Where someone else might get into a relationship with you and be like, hold up, wait, this person is prayerful, this person is, motivating, this person is positive, and I see the value in that because it's something that I value and means something to me. So, what can we do to make sure that we're seeing our full value and valuing our own worth from the space at which we should? Well, the first thing is we really need to pay attention to the fact that your value is who you are and not who finds you worthy. So the things that you bring to the world around you, and just those things, just what exists inside of you, is what makes you worthy. You are unlike any other person in this world. And that's really hard to fathom because there's a ton of people in this world, but you are unlike any person in this world. And so when you think about that and you think about the intensity of the fact that no one else is like you, then that means you have a unique characteristic and a unique set of characteristics that you're bringing into this world to bring value to the world that you are in, the places that you are placed in, the people that you are in relationship with. And if you don't identify that value, you're going to not only be in places and in situations with people who won't see it either, you're going to be in places and with people who you find yourself trying to prove your worth to because they don't see the value of you for just who you are. They only see it for what you're doing. And so if you think that your value exists in who finds you worthy, then you will forever be subject to someone else's critique of you, to someone else's rating of you, as opposed to saying, these are the things that I love about me. These are the things that I believe God has placed in me that make me worthy, and I am valuable for just being. When you start to believe that, The people who come into your space and the spaces that you insert yourself into will also see that because it is reflective. If you don't see it, then the people around you aren't going to see it. You're not going to exude it. The second thing is placing yourself on discount shows people that you are willing to negotiate your value. And this makes me think about a lot of my friends who are small business owners. And something that they stand heavily on is I will not discount my service because you can't afford to invest in it. Because I'm not supposed to lessen my value because you can't see how worthy it is and find the ability to invest in it. And isn't that true of us in life too? We walk around negotiating our worth. We say, oh, well, if that person doesn't think that's worthy enough, then perhaps I'll change that. Or if that person doesn't think it's enough, then perhaps I'll do more of it. And it's not on some self assessment type or self reflection type of situation. It's on some, if you don't see the worth, then I'm going to change the thing. It's negotiating the things that you find to be most worthy and valuable about yourself, the things that you find to be the characteristics that God placed into you to go out and show them to this world. If you're willing to negotiate those things, if you're willing to say, okay, fine, I'll give you less of this, I'll shrink this, I'll mold this into the thing that you need me to be, then the people around you are only going to have an expectation that because you don't value the thing, that you're going to be willing to shape, mold it, and change it into what they need from you. But if you stand in that and you say, you know what, these are the things that I value. These are my morals. These are my, internal compass. I'm not willing to shape, mold, or change them for anyone because I believe that doing this is part of what God wants for me. I believe that being this is part of who God crafted me to be. Those people will either leave your life because they're not willing to level up to the place of worth that you're in, or they'll start to build themselves up to a space where they are in equal parts to you because they don't want to lose the value that they feel like they have in you. I heard this quote the other day where someone was saying, when you're in a relationship with somebody who is not for you, who is toxic, etc. It kind of gives you a pass, right? And I know that sounds weird because it's really hard to be in those type of relationships, but it kind of gives you a pass because you know that that person is not as emotionally intelligent as you are. You know that they don't have the true skills to be in a relationship. So you don't really have to work on the things that you need to work on inside of a relationship because you know that what they're doing is far worse than anything that you would ever do. But when you get in a relationship with somebody who is equally as emotionally intelligent as you, who is equally as consistent with their values and the person that they are, it causes you to have to look at the pieces of you that you might need to enhance or grow or become better at. And sometimes we're afraid to look at those things. And I think that that is what happens when you place yourself on discount. Instead of you saying, I'm standing in this and it doesn't matter what I lose, we say, I'm willing to negotiate this for the sake of having whatever this thing is, and people notice it. And if they know you'll place yourself on discount, then they won't value you for what you're worth. It's kind of like if you went into, a Louis Vuitton store, and I don't have one of these bags because I'm not a label person, but I know that there are some people who are. If they didn't put a price tag on the thing, but you knew the worth of that bag, and they said, what do you think the worth of this bag is? And you said, it's $1,000. The worth of this bag is $1,000. And they said, are you willing to pay that? You probably would if you really saw the worth in the bag and you really wanted it. But someone who walks in there, who doesn't really see the value of the brand, who doesn't really see the quality of the bag, if they said, what is this bag worth to you? Somebody might say, well, it's just a purse, so I'm only going to pay $50 for that. They're not really seeing the value of that bag, so they're only willing to pay so much for it. And when you negotiate your worth, that's exactly what you're telling people. I'm looking for you to place a price tag on this. And when you place that price tag on it, you're telling me what you think it's worth and what you're willing to pay to be in the space. And it's not much. But if you see my value, you'd be willing to work and shape and mold the situation into what it would be because you don't want to lose the thing that you find value in. And the third one is when you actually truly know what you have, you won't discount yourself or allow anyone else to do it either. So when you know who you are, whose you are, and what you bring to the table, you aren't going to let somebody come in and pay the $50. You're going to require them to level up to where you are. And that's not on some self-righteousness. It's just on I know what I've done. I know the work that I've done to put myself in this space. And I'm not willing to let you and your unrefinement and your inability to self-assess to come into the space, because I know that if you do that, your inability to self-assess, self-direct, and change some things is going to then lessen my value, because I'm going to start to mold and shift to give you what you need, as opposed to growing and working on what I need. So if you continue to discount yourself and allow other people to do it, you're never going to be in spaces that appreciate you for the value that you hold. When I think about when you're applying for a job, right? There are times where miraculously you get a job that you're a bit underqualified for, right? But if you walked into a space and you knew your qualifications and you knew what you brought to that company, you knew the value that you were going to bring to the table to them, if they lowball you on the salary, you're not taking that job. You're going to be like, you don't see my worth if you're only considering paying me this much, because I've done the training, I've gone to school, I've got the certifications, and I know that those things will bring your company value that will come in monetary form. If you're not willing to give me a piece of that because you see the worth in me and that I would bring to this company, then I'm not willing to bring my value to the table. In the same token, there are going to be places that, they have a salary that they determine, how sometimes they'll be like, okay, we're going to pay from this amount to this amount, and this is our salary guidelines. And you come to the table and they see your value, they're going to pay you the top tier salary, because they're like, this girl or this guy, he's going to bring us money. I can tell by the way that they present themselves in this space, in this interview, that they are going to bring us more than we're going to be putting into their paycheck, because that's the type of value that they bring to the table. And so you have to navigate in the world that way, right? If you know your credentials, you know what your resume says, and you know how valuable that resume is. And when you walk into spaces where they're asking you to do more than what you're willing to do, and that's going to lessen the value of who you are, you're not going to do it. If you're walking into spaces where they're telling you that what you put on your resume isn't enough, you're not going to spin your wheels to try to prove that you are. You're going to go to a place that recognizes your worth and appreciates it. And so today, I just encourage you, if you're sitting in a space where you don't truly know yourself enough to even know what you value, or you've sat with yourself enough to know the things that you value, but you don't quite believe it because the people around you don't necessarily see the value of those things, I would encourage you to remember that you place your own worth on you. Sitting with yourself and sitting with God places your own worth on you. And you have the control and the power to eliminate people and take yourself out of spaces that don't see that worth, and in fact are pulling from it because they need something more of you, from you, because they won't do the work for themselves. And I really want to just leave you with this piece. There was a time where I was in a relationship where I knew that what I was bringing to the table was a lot of education, because I spent a good year working on understanding relationships, working on going to the Gottman Institute's website and reading the articles. And because I wanted to be in a healthy space, I educated myself on what that looked like, because I didn't know how to be in a healthy space, because I'd never been in a healthy relationship before. When I educated myself and when I was sending that information to the person that I was with, he valued me knowing the information, but he wasn't willing to practice and try it himself. And so I had to exit that situation. And then when I got into a different situation and I was bringing that same information and that same knowledge and wisdom to the table, he was eating it up, because he said, I've never experienced somebody who actually does the self-assessment and the work to create the quality situation that they want to be in. And that therefore made him want to do the same thing. And so I tell you that to say that if a place really sees you for the worthy person that you are, they will adapt and adjust to accommodate having someone of that high quality in their space. And if they're not doing that, then perhaps it's because they don't see your value. But either way, it's up to you to determine who you are, what your worth is, and who God says you are. I appreciate you for tuning in. Remember that you can look me up on all social media sites. Watch the video that's linked so you can get more of this content, as well as subscribing to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And also remember that the Peace Podcast comes out every Monday. So wherever you get your podcast, be it YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, go ahead and leave a review and share with your friends so that everybody can have access to the same information. I'm hoping that me sharing my story helps you the same way that you guys sharing your testimony with me has helped me through the process of growing and shifting and changing. I appreciate you, and I will see you next week.